Look, I wanted to just do a little bit of a chat about Australia and perhaps even introduce those that don't know about Impi to Impi's travels so far in a very condensed version. How long have you guys been permanently living aboard and living the nautical nomad life?
Yeah, so we bought the boat 9 years ago now, and we left South Africa 6 years ago. So we've been at sea full time for 6 years. Anna came along into my life and she had a Katana 471, which we sailed before we took Impi. And so yeah, we've been doing this for quite a while. We've visited many countries all over the world. And I must say, with you guys being Australians, we love your country. We love Australian people. It's been absolutely incredible how friendly and generous you guys have been.
It's lovely to hear, and I think you get back what you put out. So everyone has a different experience, and a lot of your experience, I think, is about the attitude that you approach it with. So what has your route been? You've crossed the Atlantic, I assume, and then the Pacific?
Yeah, you want to speak a bit about that, Anna?
Yeah, we actually lived on board Impi for 1.5 years in Cape Town, and we kitted the boat out for cruising. So we left our big farm and moved onto a tiny boat in an industrial dock in Cape Town. So, you know, it takes a lot of sort of stamina to stick with a boat when you're fitting it out for cruising. But eventually we did leave in November 2011, and we crossed towards Brazil, because normally people go via St. Helena and Ascension to go to Brazil, but we just went on the round line straight in 21 days to Fortaleza, and we arrived. And from there Mark left us, and since then we have been cruising, just the two of us, via the Caribbean islands, the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, BVI's, into Florida, and then down to Cuba, which was really amazing. It was just when all the changes were happening there, Jamaica and Panama, and into the Pacific, which was really our destination from the start. We didn't want to be one of these South African boats that stay stuck in the Caribbean. We really wanted to see the Pacific, and particularly the French islands, Polynesia, New Caledonia. Those were the books that we bought. That was our dream.
You guys have, you've been in 3 years in the Southwest Pacific now?
Yeah, this is going to be our 5th year actually. We stayed a whole year in Fiji over cyclone season. That was 2015, then went to New Zealand, back to New Caledonia to Australia, back to New Caledonia, and then back to Australia for the 2nd time.
Awesome. And we also spent a cyclone season in Fiji, and our experience wasn't as good as it could have been. And we backed up for another year and ultimately had an even worse experience and lost the boat in cyclone season in Fiji. Sure. How was your cyclone season in Fiji?
We had we stayed in Savu on a all-weather mooring supposedly, although in the subsequent year, when I think it was Winston hit, was it Winston that hit? Most of those moorings were destroyed, but when we had a cyclone warning, and we only had the one, we actually dove onto the mooring and it was screwed back in. We prepared the boat properly, took all the sails down, and none of our fellow cruisers were doing this. I'm very sad to say. We actually went to help them, and they still refused. They had tiny little lines on, no reinforcements. So we were fine, and actually the cyclone went round Fiji, so we didn't have any issues, but that was our only warning. But in the following year, I think you know that Savu was practically destroyed. I think that 2/3 of the boats ended up on the reef.
Yeah, there was a lot of damage up there.
A lot of damage, which was very sad.
So that's that choice to stay in that cyclone affected area. It's a bit of a lottery.
I think it is a lottery because you are working with a developing country's technology in one sense. So when they tell you that a mooring is a cyclone mooring, you actually don't know. Even when your insurance approves it, you actually don't know whether it is or isn't. You never know what the weather is going to do. You can look at whether it's an El Nino or La Nina year, so you can sort of gauge where the cyclones are going to hit most likely, but you don't really know. It is a lottery.
When I first met you guys, it was in New Caledonia, and I think Anna was quite keen to come to Australia, but as I recall, Brent was not.
That sounds right.
And I do happen to perhaps remember that you said something like, I will not be going to Australia.
Yeah.
And so for me to be sitting here 2 years later and this being your second season in Australia, I'm interested to know why initially you said you didn't want to come to Australia, and was it as the result of the things that had been said about Australia third party, and then what's been the actual experience, and why did you even return for a second year?
As cruisers, we all sort of talk about various destinations and places that we want to visit, that people have visited, and we heard a lot of scary stories about Australia. Not about your dangerous animals, not about the dangerous people that you are, and all that sort of thing. But we heard scare stories about the customs officials and the various clearance officials, first of all, not being very friendly, being pretty strict on boats, and to the extreme actually. And so we were hesitant about coming to Australia to experience that.
When we arrived in New Caledonia, I started straight away applying for visas because I wanted to come to Australia. And I did my visa and I got it within 1 week. And it wasn't the 3-month online visa, the e-visitor, it was a 1-year-long visa. And I also did Brent's visa application, and because when you are South African, you have a non-digital passport. And because of that, they asked for fingerprinting and all of this, and you cannot get that done in New Caledonia. You can only get it done in Fiji. So the initial thing was that we had to fly to Fiji from New Caledonia to get that done. And then I discovered like that there's a little loop that if you change your residency from South Africa to New Caledonia, which you can do by filling in a form online on the visa website, that they actually understand then, because this is one of the things that's difficult, is that you can't talk to a person. You have to do it through a computer, and so you sort of have to figure out how are you going to get around the sort of sections in the computer's mind to get around this problem. So what I did was I put his residency as New Caledonia at Port Moselle, and that allowed us to have his visa approved, but it took 1 month as opposed to 1 week. And so it was a lot of paperwork, also a lot of medicals, because Brent is diabetic, and so we had to go back 3 times for medicals, blood tests, and so on. And yeah, that cost a lot of money. So by the time we'd finished with that, that was $1,000 gone, US dollars gone. And yeah, I think Brent was getting just hung over on that one, you know, and didn't want to do it.
Yeah, look, a lot of people, one of the biggest questions we get asked is what visa do we apply for?
Yeah.
And we're not qualified to answer the question, and the Department of Immigration in Australia ask us not to tell people what visas to apply for, because it's no simple answer. It depends what country you're from, it depends on your age is, it depends on a whole lot of different factors. But the easiest thing that most people to date have done that we've witnessed is to just get the 90-day short stay visa, which is essentially granted almost immediately.
Yes, it does.
And
it takes
then,
1 day.
Yeah, and then deal with it when you get to Australia by either flying out and returning and getting another 90 days, or applying for a long stay then when you're in Australia.
We knew we weren't going to fly out, and what we didn't want is to have a refusal
And then be stuck with
and then be
cyclone
stuck.
season. Yeah.
And the later towards Christmas that you apply, because you go via Fiji, the longer it takes. Like mine took 1 month this year, which was very worrying because we had to leave the territory in New Caledonia. So if you are going to apply for a visa via New Caledonia, which goes to Fiji, do it as soon as you get there, or do it whilst you are in Fiji.
Yeah, the joy of that is there's an Australian embassy in Fiji, which makes it that much easier. If you do, you can actually go and see a person and talk to a person.
Exactly.
So yeah, look, a good piece of advice in regard to visas is do it early. Once the visa thing was aside, how did you convince him to come?
I just told him.
That's pretty much how it goes in this relationship, guys. Trust me. So, if any of you other women have a big catamaran or are looking for a new man, I'm here.
The floodgates are
That'll
going
be
to
edited out.
I think you'll have a lot of offers.
So, I think for me personally, it was a case of the stories we were hearing. So Anna was doing research on the visas and that sort of thing, and I was talking to my buddies who were cruising with us about sailing to Australia or sailing to New Zealand. And in fact, New Zealand friends actually convinced us when we had decided maybe Australia was an option. They convinced us to go down to New Zealand. Mm-hmm. So we went to New Zealand with friends, and it's cool to see New Zealand. And we then were faced the following year with whether we followed through with the whole Australian visit or not. And to be very honest about it, I think we were still thinking about what our friends were telling us. That was nagging us in the back of the head. Oh, you get there, the guys search your boat, and to the point that they unscrew every panel in the boat, they can reassemble the boat. You do not want to clear in Brisbane. People are being trained in Brisbane. So it's extra harsh in Brisbane. Whole lot of stories up and down the coast of Australia, where if you do go in, be careful, you go into this place, not that place, etc., etc.
What I found interesting with that was when you actually asked the people who was telling you those stories, had they been there?
Yeah.
The answer was always no.
Many people have not been there, and to be very honest about it, we are incredibly happy that we took the decision not to listen to what was going on out there, but to actually come and see Australia for ourselves. We actually decided we're going to do it. And when we heard about the Down Under Rally, that made it particularly enticing for us, because here was a group of people that you could talk to, Australian people. They covered a lot of the bases for us in advance. We also realized that coming into Australia would give us an opportunity to bounce ideas off you if we met resistance. But in actual fact, everything just flowed. The people were incredibly friendly. I remember somebody saying to me, Brent, be careful of your humour. Not the Coast Guard, what would it be? The clearance agents have no humour at all. The customs officers. You cannot tell them a joke. So that's like a red rag to a bull with me. I love, I could not wait actually to have the opportunity to poke this bear and see what comes back at us. And so this customs official came down to the boat, and I heard him saying, now listen mate, after this one we're going to go and have lunch. But just prior to the customs officials coming in, you'd had the guys who, the environmental guys who... Biosecurity, who take the food from the boats. So biosecurity had cleared the food off the boats that we weren't meant to have, and we've now learnt all the tricks with what foods you can have and not have. That's a different story. And when the guy stepped onto the boat, I said, mate, are you hungry? And they said, yeah, we're pretty hungry. I said, well, sorry about that, because I was going to offer you lunch, but biosecurity's just took your lunch. And they laughed. They had a great chat, and then it was about rugby and all the rest of it. So guys, it's very easy clearing into Australia. I think a person's attitude counts a lot. I think having your boat organised and clean and prepared counts for a lot. And just being respectful to the officers. They deal with a lot of different people from all over the world. And I think you kind of get back what you put in.
We've sailed across the Pacific, we've sailed into many different ports, and our experience has always been positive. I mean, there's been a different type of positive, but it's never been one where we've encountered great difficulties, because we try and always approach it with the mentality that we're a visitor, and that these people are trying to protect their country from whatever it is that they're trying to protect it from, be that pests, termites. That's their job. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And as an Australian, I'm really glad they do it. We've got a wonderful country with a lot of diverse species, and you know, it can change very quickly if it's not managed properly. So that's what that's about. So okay, we've cleared in, we've done all those things. What about cruising in Australia and the cruising grounds? Where have you been and what have you seen?
Can I just say something before we go on to that, which was quite convincing for me as well to be part of the rally, was you had like an initial meeting in Namibia, and there were like a lot of people there, both from the previous year and interested people who'd already signed up, and then some people like us. And it was like a real community of people. And that also was quite convincing for me, that it was nice to belong to this group of people.
And you know what, Anna, that is exactly, for us, we have so many people come and say, oh, we're not rally people, we're not going to do a rally. And we're not essentially, we don't consider ourselves rally people from the sense that we need our hand held or that we need to follow someone else to get to where we're going. But we have done a number of rallies before we started running our own rally that purely for the aspect of what you're talking about, the community. All of a sudden you're with a lot of people and you get to choose who out of that group you want to spend more time with or less time with. And I mean, that's what the cruising lifestyle's about. It's community. Yeah,
and what we found in Australia is that that community just grew. So you end up with a lot of friends, a lot of people to support you, and that's a really nice feeling.
And you know, that's the thing, because so many boats have not come to Australia because of the rumours and the horror stories. But the reality is, arriving in Australia, from all the feedback we've got, has been no more difficult or cumbersome than it has been any other country in the world.
Exactly.
And then when you do get here, you've got a country of people that have not used to having international boats around. And now they're in awe of you.
Yeah, exactly. And like even the cost, right? If you compare what you pay if you stay a year in Fiji, because your visas and your recurrent stay permits become quite expensive when you stay beyond 4 months and you have to do the extended applications. There's actually not that much difference in the end.
Especially not when we cleared into Fiji this year. It cost us as much to clear into Fiji this year as it cost us to clear into Australia.
Exactly.
It's all changing. It's all changing. And you know, the cost, I don't think, the cost's got to be reasonable and it's got to be managed, but it can't be the single only factor that determines whether you go somewhere or not.
No, exactly.
And it's got to be balanced against the whole experience.
Yeah.
And look, so whilst we're talking about the subject of cost, we understand that it's a real issue. It would be a real issue for me if I was to be arriving in the country and not know what it was going to cost me to arrive in the country. And the way the Department of Agriculture have structured the fees for the biosecurity inspection, I mean, it's crazy. And what we've done about that as the Down Under Rally is recognise that it's crazy, and we've said, you know what, we're going to pay the cost of the initial practique inspection and timber inspection for every vessel that joins the rally that comes to Australia, so that you can know what it's going to cost you to come to Australia. The rally entry fee last year in 2017 was $495. That included the cost of your initial biosecurity, practique and timber inspection. It included all of the Welcome Week events, which we've got a video on YouTube that you can see about our Welcome Week events and what went on there. It included the parties and everything else. I mean, and the average cost of the vessels that cleared in was $448. So for $495, it's a hell of a deal. And it just takes away that unknown part of the equation.
John, I must tell you that I have said it to many people, even local Australians. I don't quite know how you get your mathematics right on this. I don't know how you get the numbers right. But mate, with all the discounts that your suppliers are offering you or offering us as cruisers, by the time you've actually come through your visit in Australia, and by the time you've looked at all the expenses, having joined your rally makes it very worth the while.
Yeah, thank you, and that's the goal, is to make it a cost-effective rather than a cost-negative equation.
What you pay, by the way, getting into Australia you save hugely in terms of the repairs to your boat and the discounts that you guys are offering and so forth. I mean,
To the extent that you say that even Australians who stay in Australia should join.
I say
the Go
Australians
East
who stay
rally.
in Australia, it's a no-brainer. You pay the bucks for the Down Under Rally. I really would love to know how you do this, because to me, you can't be making money on this. It's a service that you offer. I guess it's your suppliers that sort of contribute towards it as well.
Look, there's two parts to that. It was a passion. As cruisers, we were 9 years, well, this is 9 years cruising, 6 years similar to you, crossing the Pacific in the bowels of the international cruising community. And we heard all these horrible stories about Australia, and we'd been here, we'd cruised all our life, and we know how wonderful it was. And through a number of events, it resulted in us being back in Australia for a summer and cruising in Australia in a summer. And that's when it really dawned on us of how extraordinary a cruising ground it was, and what a travesty it was that people didn't experience it. They'd sail halfway around the world and sail past Australia. It bamboozled me. So we decided to see if we could do something about it. And as a yachty, as a cruiser, I want the people who benefit most from the visiting yachts to pay for the privilege. And by that I mean, who benefits most from the visiting yachts? Well, it's not the Down Under Rally, I can tell you now. It's the rally partners that we've taken on. It's the suppliers, it's the marinas, it's the boatyards, it's the service providers and the sellers of products. And we wanted those people to supplement the cost by providing discounts and deals and incentives to people to come to Australia, so that the cost part of the equation was no longer a valid objection. We'll get the cost back for you if you join the rally by providing you with, it starts in New Caledonia, you get a 15% discount for the first 15 days in the marina. And then when you get to Bundaberg, if you choose to come to Bundaberg with us, you get 15% off the first 15 days there. I mean, half of your rally fees back in the first 30 days.
Yeah, absolutely. That was our assessment of it as well. Huh?
So yeah, it's all about making an added value experience.
Yeah, so I think, I don't know, well, the rally's getting the word out. It's actually word of mouth that's getting it out. We've heard from a lot of people who we've recommended actually join the rally for these benefits, giving us feedback that in fact it was that. I mean, for us it's important that we have an authentic word out there in the cruising community. We engage with a lot of cruisers. We like to be authentic in what we say. And I can honestly tell you, John, you guys run a fantastic service. You and Leanne run a fantastic service. And you see, he's looking a bit squeamish and embarrassed now. But truly, I think it's made a big difference for guys like us. And so the horror stories around Australia are sort of, well, they've eased off. A lot of our friends this year, in fact, are on your rally. They asked us about it. Should they be coming to Australia or should they be going to New Zealand? And we've discussed, the advantages and the disadvantages of both. We still like to say people should experience both. But for sure, the sail to Australia from New Caledonia is an easy sail. To get from New Caledonia to Australia is a 4-day passage for us. The weather situations getting down to New Zealand are a lot more tricky, and coming back, your boat goes through rougher oceans, let's face it. Both occasions to Australia have been very easy sails for us.
And I don't want to discourage anyone from experiencing New Zealand. If you're travelling around the world and you want to visit countries, New Zealand is a special place to go. And I don't want to be the guy that's sitting here saying don't go to New Zealand. That's not the message. We've sailed to New Zealand. We've spent a season there. We had a wonderful time there. We've got many friends who are either living in Australia that are from New Zealand, or they are living in New Zealand and cruising every year. For me, it's the least line of resistance. It's the least amount of wear and tear on the boat. And what I want to see in New Zealand isn't necessarily the cruising grounds. Whilst what there are of them are enjoyable, they're not anything by comparison to the extent of the Australian cruising ground. So, sail to Australia, jump on a plane, tour New Zealand, do all of the stuff that you should do in New Zealand, the South Island and all of the wonderful stuff that New Zealand has to offer as a tourist destination. It's just not necessarily the point that the situation that you have to sail there to experience it all.
Or you can do both, like us.
And there it is. You can go there one year and come to Australia the next year.
Yeah.
The thing about Australia as a destination, from a passage making point of view, is that it's a huge target. You've got the east coast of Australia, well, and you've got the whole east coast of Australia with multiple ports of entry. If you're halfway across on the passage and the weather's not doing as it was suggested it would, you can simply change course and go to another port.
Yeah,
I mean,
you can open or close the angles as you need to.
It's extraordinary, and I mean, we've never had to do it. We've always been able to go to Bundaberg because it is probably the most benign of the passage distances. All I want to do is point out the facts and let people make informed decisions. You need only look at the latitudes that we're sailing in to know that the likelihood of you experiencing easy passage, and if you look at the angle of the winds at that time of the year, it's typically going to be a breach or a run. It's
And
a
the
pretty
currents
easy,
as well.
and the current assist and all the things that goes with it. It's an easy destination to arrive at, and Bundaberg, look, for us, that is the premium port of entry. It's not, it's not the most dynamic of cities or towns, and by the same token, it's got a lot of appeal because it's a soft entry. You're not going straight into a big city. And
they've got very green sugar cane there.
And many kangaroos.
And lots of kangaroos.
And that's the great thing. The minute you arrive in Australia, you're meeting down-to-earth, true-blooded Aussies.
Yeah.
And in a real true Aussie environment that is relaxed and calm, and you see the animals and you get to just chill before you then move on into the cities and go back into the full pace of city life.
We've said this in some of our videos before, and it's the way that we feel, is that some of the friendliest people we've met in the world, we've met right here in Australia.
Yeah.
Australians are incredibly friendly people. We've found them to be non-complicated people, very down to earth, quick to lend you a motor car, which you guys, you and Leanne did for us as well for a while. So guys, if you want a car, don't bug them. They were doing us a favour. But just everywhere we have been in Australia, everywhere, people are giving us cars. In fact, somebody's given us a car for tomorrow. Australians will go out of their way to make this a pleasant stay for you. Somehow it seems important to Australians to have their international visitors feeling welcomed, feeling they're getting a good deal, and feeling that they're doing well.
I think we're all very proud of our country.
I think you are. Australians are proud of their country.
And we like to see other people enjoying it, and it gives us a sense of justification for our pride when other people come and say such wonderful things about it. It's refreshing because then we start to remember how really, really good it is, because when you see it through someone else's eyes, you then relive it again.
What I've loved about it, as part of our experience, in fact, has been along the lines of. I don't know why you're laughing. I'm gonna have to
Sorry,
edit this out.
I was going to say you're proud, but you can take the piss out of yourselves as well. You're not like other countries where sometimes a sense of humour just goes.
That's our lifestyle. Take the piss out of each other.
Yeah, because South Africa is like that, right?
Yeah. We try not to be too serious down here.
So, another thing that we've loved about Australia is the fact that we have found incredible backup from suppliers here. So in terms of laptops, any sort of product, our Victrons, any sort of product that's had an issue, we have found Australia has been terrific in terms of consumer protection or consumer rights, and that has been a real eye-opener for us. I've given some examples to you before of how that's come about. And we've heard it before. Many people complain about the price of services and goods in Australia. I also was a little bit shocked when I first saw, what it costs to do things in Australia. The price is not as high as people make it out to be. It is on the high side, but guys, you give quality for the service, quality workmanship, quality in goods, good backup to goods. And to the point that I'm actually recommending to people sailing through the Pacific, to buy spares from Australia, to get the invoices, to keep the invoices, to keep a record of what they're doing on their boats. And if the install has been done properly and there's a fault on the product, 9 times out of 10, you can rest assured Australia will make good on something that's become faulty. It's worth spending the extra money.
Look, and I think when you've crossed the Pacific or spent a long time, in less developed countries, you get used to the amount of money you're charged to have things done. And I know my own experience with that has been that I thought that some other countries were phenomenally affordable to have things done in, and only to discover that it took 5 times as long. It might have been a lot lower hourly rate,
Yeah.
but what in the end was the quality of the workmanship wasn't there, the product and the backup and the service for the products, the availability of the products, and the time that it took to do everything, when you really took it out in the long run in the wash, it was a false economy. So look, I mean, okay, I know that you were unlucky enough to have something that went bump in the night on a passage up from Sydney returning to the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
As a result of that, you spent a considerable amount of time having to go into having repairs done. How was that experience?
Let's talk about where we hauled, which was at the Boatworks, for example, and that's up in Southport, for the guys who don't know, the Boatworks. And just incredible. It must be the most up-to-date, cleanest, advanced boatyard we have ever come across.
With the friendliest CEO and Tony.
Yeah, with the friendliest CEO
He's
and
so
Tony.
approachable.
Yeah.
Very nice
I
guy.
actually think Tony's just like that with the woman, but yeah. True, they're great guys. Absolutely.
Or talks about the fact that he thinks there should be another washing machine because he can see how much they are being used. That was a conversation he was having with me, you know.
And talk is cheap. You know what? He's gone and put another whole laundry in there.
Well, there you go.
I mean, the guy, look, that place, they're committed, and they really do provide. We've had people say it's like going to a boat spa.
It is like that. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. The facilities are the best we've ever seen. And I must say that Scooter, who did all the work on the boat, was an amazing guy. We can't speak for everybody there, but all the people who we dealt with were just amazing people.
And the joy of that particular yard is that I think there's something like 48 trades on site.
Okay, sorry, John. Anna's just run out there for a drink. Do you guys want a drink or anything like that?
Oh, I'm happy, mate.
Thank you.
Okay, it's quite an exhausting interview, this, but not really. It's great fun with you guys.
There's another facility very close by that's got another 46 or 50 or maybe even more, I'm not sure, different trades and tenants that are providing different products and services. Getting things done, depending upon the time of year, I must say, if you end up going there in the peak of the season at Christmas time and all the locals are trying to get their boats ready to go back in the water, then it's going to be slow. But typically, you get things done promptly and, in the scheme of things, economically.
Yeah. No, it was very good. I mean, the deals were good. We thought the deals
I
were
think
good.
the work was beautifully done.
The
as
work
well.
was exceptionally
Like
well
we
done.
had quite
I mean,
difficult gel coat matches to do,
yeah.
and you can't see our repair at all.
And I can see the condition of the gel coat on Impi. I imagine you'd be very
Fussy?
particular about it.
Yeah, say that again. Because, we want to sell Impi to somebody, and we want them to.
No, we don't.
No, we're just kidding. We're only kidding.
It's our baby. We don't sell our children.
Australia is a cruising ground. I mean, how would you rate Australia based on safe, sheltered anchorages, the ease of navigation, marina availability, all those sorts of things that make cruising either a chore or a pleasure?
Yeah, I think what we've enjoyed about Australia is, look, we are not particularly marina people. Marinas are fairly expensive, but
Especially for a catamaran.
for a catamaran. But look, having said that, they're great. I mean, you go up the river at Southport again. That's a place we really like to hang out. The weather always seems really great there. There's restaurants, there's facilities, there's a lot of access to things there. And but what we really love about it is that there are so many spots to just go and drop anchor, pick up courtesy moorings, for example. If you happen to grab a mooring that's a private mooring or belongs to a club, we've done that a number of times. It's a very friendly process. A boat sort of comes alongside and says, "Hey mate, that's our mooring for the weekend, and we say thank you very much, we slip the lines and we go to the next one. It's kind of like that. So a lot of different places to anchor and shelter from different conditions, free moorings, easy access to the towns and so
And
forth.
also very different landscapes, like between Queensland and New South Wales. It is very, very different.
Yeah.
And you have, of course, the expertise of VMR that backs up. If you are like a cruiser and you don't know so much, you're only ever a phone call away, because their phone numbers are published everywhere.
And just for anyone that's not familiar with VMR, it's the equivalent of a Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they are volunteers, right?
Correct, yes.
And like all the people we have ever phoned, because we're sort of like quite private, so we don't like to use the radio, because then everybody's listening in. It's not that you can't, you can use your radio.
There's
if
those
you
damn
want
South
to.
Africans again.
But like you can just call them on your cell phone, even far out at sea, and you can just speak to somebody who really takes time to give you advice on the bars or on anchoring spots, and I've really appreciated that. I've always done my homework that way. So yeah, that's another plus point, I think.
So it's an easy place to cruise.
You know what? It is an easy place to cruise, and yet you can make it adventurous. You know, there's bar crossings. I like a little bit of a challenge now and then, especially when an Australian tells me, mate, you can't go in there because there's a bar and it's running heavily. I want to go and check it out for myself.
This
And
was me telling him on the way down here, because he was going in one that I wasn't going in.
I was being polite. And then it actually turned out to be a really cool spot to spend our time. It was a little place called
Foster Tuncurry.
Foster Tuncurry. It was awesome evening there.
Such
Big
friendly
pelicans,
people,
beautiful, friendly people. And that's the other thing. Wherever you are willing to poke your nose into, or your bows into a little place down the coast, people are just there, they're friendly, they're welcoming you. We had a boat tell us, mate, don't drop anchor there, there's a free mooring ball over there. Do you want us to help tie you up for the night? Really, we've enjoyed that about Australia.
It's so nice to hear that.
Yeah, we've enjoyed that about Australia.
Because that has nothing to do with a rally or people knowing
No,
us
absolutely.
or
Yeah.
anything like that. It's
Oh,
just
it's genuine.
spontaneous, you know?
And,
Yeah.
and so not having to do the night passages, the day sailing between anchorages,
Yeah.
Yeah.
has that
you know,
been your experience?
Yeah, you're able to do little day hops down or a day and a night. You know,
That's what you want to do.
it depends
really.
what you want to do.
Yeah, right.
We sailed with a crazy couple the other day down the coast here, and they just kept hacking it out through the night while we snored nice and peacefully in Tuncurry.
I think that might have been me again.
Just kidding, Joe.
Once I get a sniff of the gate, I'm going to go. And okay, so I think you spent, you did the bucket list tick of the fireworks in Sydney Harbour New Year's Eve.
Yeah, last year
Started
we did the
Sydney
fireworks. I mean, the fireworks display is something incredible. You have to do it once in your life. Anna refused to allow me to do it a second time because she was standing on the bow with the bitch wings. These are called bitch wings. You stand on the bow and show your bitch wings, okay?
Chasing people.
And she was chasing people off because there's just that many boats, guys. People are drinking, they're having a good time. I mean, you know, the volunteer marine services are out there trying to keep control of the masses. It's a big party, man. And you know, Impi's our home.
Yeah.
So Anna was doing a lot to defend our home that night. But the fireworks are something you've just got to do from a boat. You can feel the power of it through the hulls of the boat. It's huge explosions. It's something that foreigners like us have just never experienced before. And then of course you got the start to the Hobart race. That's
But
a
I was
whole...
also very excited about fireworks. I really wanted to do that. I think I was just shocked by how people anchor.
Well, look, and when you're in New South Wales, by and large, you've just commented earlier about the moorings. There's such a huge number of moorings. Most people are not used to anchoring here. Yeah, you've got to understand that, and you've got to take a little bit of care when people are anchoring around you. But I would definitely it would be ill-advised to scream and shout at Australians.
No, we haven't tried that. The bitch wings actually works quite well, you know, so understanding the bow. Guys,
You
if
know what?
yeah.
Most people, when you speak to them and you say, "Are you going to be okay there? Because this is where our anchor is," they are very responsive to that.
We typically move. If we're not comfortable, we go ourselves, and we'll just find another spot because it's the
Exactly.
least line of resistance, and
Exactly.
we've got plenty of time, and we don't have to go back to work the next day. We can just move around. And
No, we've
At our
definitely
leisure.
discovered that. So if we like a spot where an Australian boat is sitting, I always just go drop on top of the boat and they move and we've got a very nice spot, right? I'm kidding, guys, I'm kidding.
As a cruising ground, it stacks up. It's met your expectations, Australia.
Yeah, as a cruising ground, I think it's diverse. It's exciting in terms of, you can take on an adventure here if that's your thing, which I like to do from time to time. And yet you can play it safe if that's your thing. You can go into calm anchorage and you can sort of be in a very safe spot for as long as you like. Well, Australia's a big country. It's a huge country. So there's a lot to it. I mean, we're going to be heading down to Tasmania now. We
How
believe
awesome.
Tasmania's a totally different place altogether, yet it's part of Australia. Maybe we can give you some feedback when we come back from there.
Maybe you can come and do the talk at the Go West Welcome Week about cruising Tasmania. I'm so excited that you're going to Tasmania. We've not cruised there, but I think that to have the spirit of adventure enough to go there, the reward is going to be significant.
Yeah.
From everyone that's been there, it is some special place to cruise.
10 years ago,
Wow.
Anna and I sailed in the Whitsundays. We bear chartered a boat in the Whitsundays, and we went back and we said, man, we're going to sell our catamaran. We're going to buy a catamaran that will now be our home, and we're going to go sailing around the world full time because of our experience in the Whitsundays.
Wow.
That's how much we enjoyed it.
So it's our fault.
Yeah, it's Australia's fault. So, yeah, all good, mate.
Well, guys, I've got to tell you, I'm very chuffed to be sitting here, and knowing that you were reluctant to come to Australia, and knowing now that you're back for a second season and contemplating a third, I'm just really pleased that it's lived up to your expectations, and all of the fear mongering hasn't stopped you having a wonderful experience.
No, we've had a wonderful time, and a lot of cruisers all talking about Leanne's a yoga for yachties program that goes on. We haven't heard a peep from Leanne here, so we need to hear a bit more about yoga for
Yeah,
yachties.
well, I wasn't supposed to be sitting here. He's got all the questions going.
Oh, he's got all the questions. Okay, John, you see. Yeah, part of the Down Under Rally is that you have a yoga for yachties program, right?
Yes, yes.
Which makes it just adds a whole new dimension to the rally, that people can go up and do yoga with you in the mornings, or
Yeah, it definitely has. I think it works well together, the combination. I don't know whether it started off as that intention, but it was just something that was my personal experience on the boat, but it actually has come together as something that everyone seems to enjoy within the rally as well. So yeah, it's
We're yet to get Brent to come along, but
I'm just a very honest person. I can't do yoga.
Oh, you can. You were a
oh, now
gymnast.
that's a bad statement.
Yeah, it's a lot of exercise, guys.
Everybody's got a body for yoga, my wife said.
yeah. If you can breathe, you can do yoga.
I can breathe, I can do yoga. My problem is that I know Anna, and if I'm going to start doing yoga, I have to start getting up early in the mornings.
I think Brent's a very competitive guy, and he's seen these guys doing yoga, and he's not up for the task.
You know what? He's actually way better at a lot of things.
Okay, maybe I'm going to yoga tomorrow.
Yeah, he's adventurous.
Yeah.
You talk about getting back what you put out there. It's humbling to have people come to Australia, join our rally, and then have a wonderful experience, and unsolicited testimonies, and the gratitude that we bestowed it's humbling.
You see the gratitude, there you go. Because when people have been on the rally and they've seen all the advantages that are offered, the price is right.
Cruises are cheap.
So cruisers, we're not trying to talk his price up here, because John has a philosophy of getting Australians to pay for our experiences in Australia, right?
That's the absolute
it's
truth.
Kind of what you're trying to do. Also, you're trying to set a sort of a limit on your entry fee, because entry into Australia can be quite tricky, especially if your boat isn't properly prepared or you aren't quite...
Look, I can't control what the government does, and I can't influence the government's decisions. So
What I can do is find a way to manage that, and the way I've found to manage it is say, I don't really care what the government does. I'm going to make this work, and I'm going to get the people who benefit most from the international visiting yachts to supplement the costs for them of coming to Australia.